The quiet of our apartment in downtown Des Moines, Iowa, used to be a comfort. It's a third-floor walk-up in a brick building that's probably 100 years old, right off Ingersoll Avenue. You can hear the distant rumble of the train sometimes, and in the mornings the faint sounds of traffic picking up. It felt like a little bubble of peace in the middle of the city. For the past week, though, that quiet has felt heavy, suffocating. It's been too full of the things left unsaid, the frantic energy buzzing beneath Maya's skin, the fear that has settled in her eyes like dust. Maya. We've been together for 3 years, 3 good years. Stable, loving, built on mutual respect and a shared sense of humor that gets us through the mundane stuff. We've built a life here, in these rooms filled with thrift store furniture and plants we're trying not to kill. I was starting to think about rings, about futures that looked like this, quiet evenings on the couch, weekend trips to places like the farmer's market in the East Village or hiking trails near Boone, maybe eventually a little house with a yard. All of that feels distant now, like a picture I can see but can't quite touch. It started the morning after she got back from that party. Her friend Chloe was hosting it out in West Des Moines, a get-together for people who knew each other through some shared hobby group Maya is part of. I couldn't go. I had a work deadline, a report that needed my full attention that Saturday. I told her to go, have fun, see her friends. I trusted her implicitly. Always have. She'd driven herself, promising to text when she was heading home. The text stopped around midnight. I wasn't worried at first. Parties run late sometimes, but then 1 a.m. rolled around, then 2 a.m., and still nothing. I checked her location on the app we share, a habit born more of convenience than concern, usually just to see if she's left work yet or is stuck in traffic on I-235. It showed her finally pulling up to our building just before 2:30 a.m. A wave of relief washed over me, quickly followed by a flicker of annoyance that she hadn't texted. But I pushed it down. She was home. That was the important thing. She came in quietly, moving slower than usual. She looked wrong. Pale, eyes a little unfocused, hair messy. Not just regular tired after a party messy. Something else. She mumbled something about being exhausted and went straight to bed. I stayed up for a bit longer, finishing up some work, trying to shake off the weird feeling her arrival had left me with. Sunday morning, she was still in bed when I woke up. I made coffee, the smell filling the apartment, hoping it would rouse her. When I checked on her, she was curled up under the duvet, shivering slightly, even though it wasn't cold. She said she felt sick, like a terrible hangover, headache pounding, stomach churning. But Maya barely drinks. A glass of wine with dinner sometimes, maybe 1 beer at a brewery. Getting drunk isn't her thing. A terrible hangover for her would be 2 margaritas, not this. She stayed in bed all day Sunday, barely moving except for trips to the bathroom. She didn't eat. She spoke in monosyllables. It wasn't just a hangover. This was something deeper. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The week that followed was a blur of worry and confusion. Maya took sick days from work. She spent most of her time in bed or curled up on the couch under a blanket, staring into space. She flinched at sudden noises. She barely ate. She seemed physically unwell. Persistent headaches, nausea, a general achiness she couldn't explain. I asked her gently if she was okay, if she needed anything, if she wanted to talk about the party. She just shook her head or mumbled that she was just sick, she'd be fine. I felt helpless and confused. Was she just that hungover? Was she upset about something that happened at the party? Was she mad at me for not being there? My mind cycled through possibilities, none of them quite fitting the severity of her reaction. It felt like a wall had gone up between us, silent and invisible, but solid as concrete. The apartment, our safe space, felt contaminated by whatever she was carrying. I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. I went to work, but I was distracted, replaying every interaction, every flicker of expression on her face. I came home, made dinner she didn't eat, watched TV shows she didn't seem to see. The quiet was deafening. The questions in my head were relentless. What happened at that party? What is she not telling me? One evening, maybe 5 or 6 days after she got back, she was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. The city lights were starting to twinkle outside the window. A police siren wailed in the distance. a sound that usually faded into the background but tonight felt sharp, intrusive. I sat down next to her, leaving a little space, not wanting to crowd her. "Maya," I said softly, "please, talk to me. You're not okay. This isn't just being sick." She didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the wall. "I messed up, Ethan." Her voice was barely a whisper. My chest tightened. Messed up how? She hesitated for a long moment, and I could see her physically bracing herself. The party. I got really drunk. More than I ever have. Okay, drunk. Still didn't explain the whole week, but it was a start. Okay, and I was stupid. I hooked up with someone. The air left my lungs. Hooked up. Cheated. The word hit me like a physical blow, despite my earlier vague worries. With who? I didn't know many of her hobby friends. Who? I managed to choke out. Blake Jensen. Blake Jensen. I knew the name. He was part of that same hobby group. Older guy, maybe early 30s. Clean cut, always seemed a bit too smooth, too confident when I'd seen him at group events. Never liked him, couldn't say exactly why. Just a gut feeling. And now, this. Blake Jensen, I repeated, the name tasting sour in my mouth. You hooked up with Blake Jensen? She nodded, still not looking at me. Tears were silently tracking down her cheeks. I was so drunk, Ethan. It was a stupid mistake. I'm so sorry. My mind was reeling, cheating. After 3 years, with him. The hurt was immediate, sharp and deep. It felt like the foundation of our life together had just cracked. But even as the personal betrayal washed over me, the wave of confusion didn't recede. This level of physical and emotional distress, for consensual, albeit drunken sex, it still didn't fit. Her pain seemed too profound, too raw, too much like something else. Shame, yes, but also terror. I didn't know what to say. My head was spinning. A stupid mistake? Was that all she thought it was? Was that all she remembered? I wanted to yell, to ask how she could do this, after everything, after us. But looking at her curled up and trembling, I couldn't. The raw vulnerability she was displaying, even in her confession of betrayal, held me back. It wasn't the reaction of someone who had just made a regretted bad decision. It was the reaction of someone who was deeply, fundamentally broken. "Maya," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. "Look at me." She finally turned her head, her eyes red-rimmed and full of misery. This isn't just a stupid mistake, is it?" I asked, the question hanging heavy in the air between us. "Something else happened, didn't it?" She just sobbed, burying her face in her hands. And in that moment, my own hurt, my own feeling of betrayal, began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard dread. The picture was still blurry, but I was starting to see the edges of something far, far worse than infidelity. The next few days were a strange limbo. Maya remained withdrawn, though the confession seemed to have opened a tiny crack in the wall between us. She still wasn't eating much, still looked exhausted, but she didn't flinch quite as much. We existed in the apartment, breathing the same air, but in parallel universes. I went through the motions of work, of making food, of tidying up, while my mind was a whirlwind of questions and terrifying possibilities. I couldn't shake the feeling that her story was incomplete. Got really drunk and hooked up, didn't explain the week of physical illness, the deep-seated fear in her eyes, the way she seemed to shrink into herself. It felt like she was telling me the part she could process, the part she maybe blamed herself for, but not the whole truth of what happened to her. My initial shock and hurt over the perceived cheating was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but they were being overshadowed by a growing, cold fear. Fear for her. Fear of what I didn't know. I thought about talking to someone. My parents weren't an option. Their own messy divorce had taught me that involving them in my relationship problems was a recipe for disaster. My friends? How do you even start that conversation? Hey, my girlfriend might have cheated on me, but also I think something truly awful happened to her, and she can barely talk about it. It felt too big, too raw, too private. But I needed to talk to someone. Someone who knew Maya, who might have seen something, who could offer a different perspective. Sarah. Maya's best friend. They'd been close since college, sharing apartments, going through breakups and job changes together. Sarah was practical, grounded, and fiercely loyal to Maya. If anyone could offer insight, it was her. I texted Sarah, asking if she was free to grab coffee. I kept it casual, just saying I wanted to catch up. We agreed to meet the next afternoon at Mars Cafe, a little spot near Drake University that we sometimes went to. The smell of roasted coffee and the low hum of conversation were usually comforting, but that day everything felt amplified, my nerves stretched thin. Sarah arrived, looking her usual put-together self, though her eyes held a hint of concern when she saw me. "Hey, Ethan. Everything okay? You seemed a little urgent in your text." I ordered a black coffee, needing the jolt. "Yeah, no, not really." I took a deep breath. How much could I say? Maya hadn't told Sarah the specifics. That much was clear from Sarah's worried questions about Maya being sick. I couldn't just dump everything on her, but I needed to gauge if she knew anything, if she had seen Maya that night, if she had any piece of the puzzle. "It's about Maya," I started, keeping my voice low. She's been having a really rough time since that party at Chloe's. She told me she got really drunk and she's been physically sick all week, but it feels like more than that. She seems scared, really shaken up." Sarah nodded, her expression serious. "I know. I texted her a couple times, but she just said she had a horrible hangover. Chloe mentioned she left early, wasn't feeling well. I was worried. What else is going on?" "That's just it," I said, leaning forward slightly. "I don't know. She told me she got really drunk, and she said she made a mistake with Blake Jensen." Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "Blake Jensen?" There was surprise, maybe a little judgment in her tone, but also concern. "Wow, okay. I didn't see them together. I barely talked to Blake, honestly. He was kind of circulating, being his usual charming self. But a mistake? Like they hooked up?" "That's what she said," I confirmed, watching her face. "But like I said, her reaction, it feels bigger than just regretting hooking up while drunk. She's been a mess, Sarah. Physically ill, jumpy, barely sleeping. It's like she's gone through something traumatic." Sarah was quiet for a moment, stirring her latte. The clinking spoon sounded loud. "Traumatic," she repeated softly. She looked at me, her expression thoughtful. You think something happened? Something more than just a regrettable hookup?" "I don't know what to think," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. "But her state, it doesn't add up. And she seems to have huge gaps in her memory about the night. She just keeps saying she was so drunk." "Yeah, she's not a big drinker," Sarah mused. "Getting so drunk for her is probably not that much, but enough to black out? Not remember things?" "Maybe," I said, though the word felt weak. Blacking out from alcohol alone seemed unlikely to cause this specific, prolonged reaction. Unless something else was involved. The thought, which had been a terrifying whisper in the back of my mind, started to grow louder. "Did you see her drink anything specific?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Like anything weird? Or was anyone pushing drinks on her?" Sarah frowned, thinking. "Not that I saw directly. It was a party. People were drinking. Standard stuff, I think. Beer, some mixed drinks. Chloe had some punch, maybe? I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention to what everyone was drinking. Blake was handing out shots at one point, I remember that. Mystery shots, he called them. Said they were his special blend. Sounded gross, I avoided them. Did Maya have one? Mystery shots, Blake's special blend. The phrase sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. My gut clenched. "I don't know," I said slowly. "She hasn't mentioned shots, just got really drunk." We talked for a while longer, circling the edges of the unknown. Sarah shared what little she remembered of the party, the general atmosphere, who was there, Blake's presence. Nothing concrete, nothing that screamed something awful happened, but enough to fuel my growing unease. Sarah reiterated her worry for Maya and promised to be there for her, for both of us. Leaving the cafe, I felt a strange mix of dread and a grim determination. Sarah's concern validated mine. The pieces still didn't fit the picture of a simple drunken mistake. The mystery shots detail, combined with Maya's symptoms and memory gaps, pointed towards a far more sinister possibility. Back in the quiet apartment, the weight felt even heavier. Maya was asleep, curled up in bed. I looked at her face pale and drawn, and felt a surge of fierce protectiveness. My own hurt over the initial confession seemed trivial now. What if she hadn't just made a mistake? What if something had been done to her? The thought was unbearable. I knew I couldn't confront her directly with my suspicions, not yet, not without more information. She was already fragile. I needed to understand what I was even suspecting. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat at my laptop in the living room, the screen casting a pale glow on the walls. I started searching, not for cheating, but for memory loss after party, symptoms after spiked drink, date rape, drugs effects. The results were horrifying. Descriptions of dizziness, nausea, confusion, inability to resist, significant memory gaps, prolonged physical and emotional distress. It was like reading a description of Maya's past week. Every symptom, every behavior, every fragmented detail she'd let slip, it all fit. The more I read, the colder I felt. My hands trembled as I scrolled through articles, through survivor accounts. It wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was a terrifying probability. Maya hadn't just made a mistake. She had been targeted, incapacitated, violated. The anger that began to simmer was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It wasn't the hot, messy anger of betrayal. It was a cold, focused rage directed outwards towards Blake Jensen and anyone else who might have been involved, who might have stood by and let it happen. Towards the casual cruelty of taking away someone's autonomy, their memory, their sense of safety in their own body. But beneath the rage was a profound sadness, a gut-wrenching ache for Maya, for what she had gone through, likely alone and terrified, while I was just a few miles away, oblivious. For the violation she had endured and the shame she was carrying, perhaps believing it was her fault because she had been drinking. I closed the laptop, plunging the room back into darkness. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, trying to process the enormity of what I had uncovered. My perspective had shifted completely. The conflict was no longer about my hurt or our relationship's potential end. It was about Maya's trauma, her healing, her safety. I knew what I had to do. I had to talk to her again. Not about her mistake, but about what might have happened to her. I had to create a space where she could feel safe enough to maybe, just maybe, access those terrifying blank spots in her memory, or at least understand that what happened wasn't her fault. I had to let her know without a shadow of a doubt that I believed her and that I was here. For all of it. For her. The apartment still felt heavy, but now it felt less like a space filled with unspoken secrets and more like a fragile sanctuary that needed to be protected. Protected for her. The next morning, I woke up feeling heavy and resolute. The confusion was gone, replaced by a grim clarity. I knew what I needed to talk about, but I didn't know how. The words felt too big, too dangerous. How do you gently suggest to the person you love that they might have been sexually assaulted? How do you open that door without terrifying them further? I decided to take a sick day myself. I couldn't focus on work. All I could think about was Maya, asleep in the next room, carrying this immense weight alone. I made coffee, moving quietly. I checked on her. She was still asleep, her breathing shallow. I spent the morning trying to prepare myself. I read more online, focusing now on how to support a trauma survivor, how to talk about sexual assault in a way that is validating and non-judgmental. The consistent message was, believe them, let them lead, create safety. It felt both simple and incredibly daunting. I tidied the apartment, trying to make it feel as calm and safe as possible. I opened the curtains in the living room, letting the pale winter sunlight filter in. The view of the brick buildings and leafless trees outside felt grounding. This was our home. It needed to feel like a haven. Around noon, Maya stirred. She came out of the bedroom slowly, wrapped in her blanket, her eyes blinking against the light. She looked surprised to see me home. "Hey," she mumbled, her voice raspy. "You okay? Not at work?" "Hey," I said, keeping my voice soft. "Took the day. Wanted to be here." She nodded slowly, not questioning it. She curled up on the couch, pulling the blanket tighter around her. I sat in the armchair opposite her, giving her space. The quiet returned, but this time it felt less tense, more expectant. "Maya," I began, my heart pounding, "can we talk? About the party?" She stiffened, her eyes clouding over again. "I told you, Ethan. I messed up. I said I was sorry." "I know you did," I said quickly, wanting to stop that train of thought before it left the station. "And I heard you, but I've been thinking. And I'm worried about you. Really worried." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Your confession about Blake, it hurt. Yeah, but the way you've been since, the physical sickness, the memory problems, how scared you seem, it doesn't fit with just a drunken mistake. It feels like something happened to you." Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. "Fear? Recognition? What do you mean? I just got too drunk." I know that's what you remember, I said gently, but sometimes, when people are really intoxicated, or if someone gives them something without them knowing, they can't consent to things, they can't stop things from happening, and they might not remember it clearly. I took a deep breath. This was it. Maya. I'm scared that maybe someone took advantage of you that night, when you weren't able to say no, that maybe what happened wasn't something you chose, even if you were drunk. She stared at me, her eyes searching mine. I held her gaze, trying to convey nothing but care and belief. No judgment, no anger towards her, just concern for her. Slowly, tentatively, she spoke. I just remember feeling really dizzy. After I had a shot. Someone gave me a shot, I didn't really want it, but Liam said it was his birthday and everyone was doing them. It was Blake's shot, though. He said it was his special blend. My blood ran cold. Blake's special blend. Just like Sarah said. Okay, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the icy dread spreading through me. You had a shot, and then you felt dizzy? Yeah, really fast, and then things got blurry. I remember sitting down. Someone gave me water, maybe, and Liam was there. He seemed worried. He said he'd drive me home. And then I think Blake was there too, and maybe someone else. 2 other guys, I don't know. It's all hazy. She squeezed her eyes shut, a pained expression on her face. I remember being in a car. Liam was driving. Someone else was in the back, and then coming up the stairs. Someone was helping me, holding me up. She shuddered, tears starting to fall again. And then, in the apartment, it's just flashes, feeling heavy, like I couldn't move, hands touching me, and I couldn't make it stop. I wanted to say no, I think, but I couldn't, and it hurt, Ethan. It really hurt. Her voice broke, and she started sobbing openly, the sound tearing at my heart. This was it, the terrifying truth emerging in fragments from the fog of trauma and forced incapacitation. I got up and moved to the couch, sitting beside her. I didn't try to hug her tightly, just gently put my arm around her shoulders, letting her lean into me if she wanted to. Oh, Maya, I whispered, holding her as she cried. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to, she choked out between sobs. I didn't mean to. I was so drunk. Is it my fault? No, I said firmly, pulling back slightly so she could see my face. My eyes were probably watering too. No, absolutely not. It is not your fault. You were incapacitated. You couldn't consent. Someone took advantage of you. That is their fault, not yours. Never yours. I held her as she cried, letting her release some of the terror and confusion she'd been holding onto for a week. The confession about hooking up was just the tip of the iceberg, the part her mind had perhaps reframed to make it marginally more bearable, or the only part she could access through the haze. The reality was a violation, an assault. It was Blake, she whispered finally, her voice raw. And maybe the other guys who came upstairs? I don't know who they were, friends of his, friends of Liam's. Blake Jensen, the smooth, charming guy with the special blend shots. The rage flared again, hot and swift, but I pushed it down. My focus had to be on Maya. Okay, I said, stroking her hair. Okay, we don't have to figure everything out right now. Just thank you for telling me what you could. Thank you for trusting me. I was so scared, she whispered. Scared you'd be mad, that you'd think I cheated, that you'd leave. I was hurt at first, I admitted honestly, when I thought it was cheating. But seeing you, the way you've been, I knew there was more. And I'm not leaving, Maya. I'm right here, and I believe you. Every word. We sat like that for a long time, holding each other, the weight of the revelation settling over us. It was devastating, but it was also clarifying. The confusion was gone. The fear was still there, but now it had a name, a face, and a purpose, protecting Maya and helping her heal. The apartment, once a place of unspoken tension, now felt like a fragile shared space of pain and vulnerability, but also of unwavering support. The healing had to start here, together. The hours after the conversation were a blur of tears and quiet moments. We didn't talk much more about the specifics of that night. The details were too painful, too hazy, too terrifying. The focus shifted naturally to the present, to the immediate aftermath of finally naming the trauma. Maya was exhausted, emotionally and physically. I helped her get ready for bed, making sure she had water, adjusting the pillows. She still seemed fragile, but there was a subtle shift in her demeanor. The deep, hidden fear hadn't vanished, but the crushing weight of carrying the secret alone, and perhaps blaming herself, seemed to have lessened slightly. Knowing that I believed her, that I saw it as something done to her, not something she did, seemed to offer a sliver of relief. I slept on the couch again. Not because I wanted distance, but because I didn't want to crowd her, to add any pressure. I could hear her stirring sometimes during the night, quiet sobs or restless movements. It was heartbreaking, but at least now I knew why. The next morning, the apartment felt different. The air still held the residue of the difficult conversation, but there was also a sense of shared purpose. We were facing this together now. The first step was practical. Medical care. The internet research had been clear on this. A medical examination was important for Maya's health, for potential injuries, and for STI and pregnancy testing. It was also the first step in potentially gathering forensic evidence, though that was a separate decision. Bringing it up was hard. I sat with her after breakfast, the remnants of toast and tea between us. "Maya," I started gently, "we should probably see a doctor, get you checked out, just to make sure everything is okay, and maybe get some tests done. For STIs, pregnancy." She flinched slightly at the mention of tests, understandable given the circumstances. "Do I have to?" she asked, her voice small. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to do," I said immediately, reinforcing her autonomy. "But it's important for your health, Maya, and it might give you some peace of mind. I'll go with you. I'll be right there." After some gentle persuasion and reassurance, she agreed. I called a doctor's office in the neighborhood. Explaining the situation over the phone was difficult, trying to be discreet but clear enough about the urgency. The receptionist was understanding and managed to squeeze us in for an appointment later that afternoon. Getting ready was slow. Maya was still weak. Just the thought of leaving the apartment seemed daunting for her. I helped her choose clothes, made sure she had her insurance card. The simple act of getting dressed felt like a monumental effort. The doctor's office was in a modern building just a few blocks away. The waiting room was bright, filled with generic magazines and the quiet murmur of other patients. Sitting there, holding Maya's hand, I felt a surge of protective anger. She shouldn't have to be here. She shouldn't have gone through this. When they called her name, she squeezed my hand tightly. "Can you come in with me?" she whispered. "Absolutely," I said. The doctor was a kind, middle-aged woman. I briefly explained in Maya's presence that Maya had been at a party, believed her drink might have been tampered with, and had fragmented memories suggesting she was taken advantage of while incapacitated. The doctor was compassionate and professional. She spoke directly to Maya, explaining the examination process, her rights, and the options for forensic evidence collection if Maya chose to pursue that path. She didn't at that time. I stayed in the room during the non-examination parts, holding Maya's hand, offering quiet words of support. The examination itself was understandably difficult for Maya. I waited just outside the door, my jaw clenched, feeling helpless, but needing to respect her privacy in that moment. Afterward, the doctor talked to us about physical recovery, potential lingering effects, and the importance of mental health support. She gave us information about local resources, therapists specializing in trauma, sexual assault survivor support groups in Des Moines. She ordered the tests we'd discussed. Leaving the office, Maya was quiet, leaning on me slightly. The physical part was over, but the emotional weight remained immense. We walked back to the apartment slowly, the sounds of the city, a bus rumbling past, someone laughing on the street, feeling distant and muffled. Back home, the apartment felt like a true sanctuary again. Being outside, even for that short time, had been draining. We settled back on the couch. The afternoon sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the room. "Thank you," Maya said softly, her voice tired, "for coming with me." "Always," I said, pulling her gently closer. "Always." We spent the rest of the evening quietly. I made a simple dinner she actually ate a little of. We watched a mindless movie. The physical symptoms of the past week, the nausea, the headaches, seemed to be slowly receding, replaced by a different kind of pain, a deeper emotional and psychological one. The doctor's visit had been a necessary step, a concrete action in the face of overwhelming emotional chaos. It felt like we had taken the first small step onto a very long road. The next day, We started looking at therapists. The list the doctor gave us had names and contact information for practices around Des Moines. It felt overwhelming. How do you choose the right person to help you navigate something so deeply personal and painful? We looked at websites, read bios, talked about what Maya felt she might need. It was another small step, another active choice in reclaiming agency after it had been so brutally taken away. We also talked, briefly, about reporting to the police. The doctor had given us information about the process in Iowa, the Sexual Assault Response Team, SART, the police investigation, the potential difficulties. I explained to Maya what I had learned online and from the doctor, that reporting is a difficult process, that it can be re-traumatizing, that justice is not guaranteed, especially with cases involving intoxication and memory gaps. But I also emphasized that it was her right, and that if she wanted to pursue it, I would support her fully, every step of the way. "I don't know if I can," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears again. "Relive it, talk to strangers. What if they don't believe me? What if nothing happens?" "It's okay," I said immediately. "It's okay not to be ready, or to decide not to report at all. That is completely your choice, Maya. Your recovery is the most important thing. Whatever you decide about reporting, I support you. We can focus on getting you better first." She nodded, seeming relieved at not having the pressure of that decision right now. The focus remained on healing. I took the rest of the week off work, using vacation days and sick leave. My job wasn't going anywhere, and Maya needed me here. We spent the days quietly in the apartment, a routine slowly forming around her needs. Simple meals, short walks outside when she felt up to it, watching comfort shows, lots of quiet time just being together. Holding hands, talking when she wanted to, sitting in comfortable silence when she didn't. Sarah checked in with me regularly. I told her vaguely that it was more serious than a hangover, that Maya was dealing with something difficult and needed time and support. I didn't go into the specifics of the assault. That felt like Maya's story to share, if and when she was ready. Sarah was understanding and offered to bring over food, or just sit with Maya if I needed a break. Her quiet support was invaluable. Blake Jensen. His name hung in the air, unspoken most of the time, but always present. I saw his picture pop up on a mutual friend's social media feed once. A wave of pure visceral hatred washed over me. He was just out there, living his life, while Maya was here, struggling to put herself back together. The injustice of it was infuriating, but confronting him or even thinking about him too much felt like a distraction from the real work that needed to be done, helping Maya heal. The apartment, once a place of quiet comfort, then of heavy tension, now felt like a cocoon. A place where Maya could be vulnerable, where she could begin to process the trauma, surrounded by belief and support. It wasn't a quick fix. There were still moments of deep sadness, of fear, of frustration with the memory gaps. Healing wasn't a linear path. It was messy, with ups and downs. But there were also moments of light, a shared laugh over a silly movie, Maya eating a full meal for the first time in over a week, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, small victories that felt huge. One evening, curled up on the couch, Maya turned to me. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered, her voice stronger than it had been days ago. "Thank you for believing me, for not leaving." "Never leaving," I said, holding her close. "We're in this together, Maya, every step of the way." The road ahead was long. Trauma leaves deep scars. But as I sat there, holding the woman I loved in our quiet apartment in Des Moines, surrounded by the everyday sounds of the city outside our window, I felt a sense of determined hope. We had faced the terrifying truth. We had taken the first steps, and we were facing it together. That was the most important thing. The tests from the doctor came back a few days later, negative for STIs and pregnancy, a small but significant relief in the midst of everything else. It removed 2 immediate, pressing worries, allowing us to focus more fully on the emotional and psychological healing. We started reaching out to therapists. It was a process of phone calls, leaving messages, checking availability, trying to get a feel for who might be a good fit. Maya was hesitant, nervous about talking to a stranger about something so deeply personal and painful. I encouraged her, reminding her that it was a space just for her, to help her process and heal. I offered to sit with her while she made the calls, or even do the initial contact if she wanted, but she decided she wanted to do it herself, another small step in reclaiming control. We scheduled a first appointment for the following week. It felt like another milestone, a concrete step forward. Life outside the apartment continued, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred within our walls. Bills still needed to be paid, groceries bought, work attended. I went back to work, though my focus wasn't quite what it used to be. My colleagues noticed I seemed a little quieter, more serious, but they put it down to me taking time off and catching up. The world kept turning, a jarring contrast to the internal world Maya was navigating. Sarah continued to be a quiet, supportive presence. She'd text occasionally, asking how Maya was doing. I'd give her brief, honest updates. She's having a tough time, taking it day by day. We're focusing on getting her support. Sarah didn't push for details, just offered practical help, dropping off groceries, sending a gift card for a meal delivery service so we didn't have to cook. Her friendship was a lifeline, a reminder that we weren't completely isolated. Blake Jensen's name came up indirectly a couple of times. Once, Chloe, the host of the party, texted Maya asking if she was feeling better. Maya replied vaguely. Chloe mentioned that Blake had been asking about her, saying he was worried she got sick at his party. The sheer audacity of it, the manipulative concern, made my blood boil. Maya just showed me the text, her face pale. We didn't reply. His attempts to insert himself back into her life, however seemingly innocent, felt like a violation in themselves. Another time, Sarah mentioned she'd heard through the grapevine that Blake was telling people Maya had gotten absolutely trashed at the party and had been coming on to everyone, implying she was responsible for her state and any subsequent interactions. It was classic victim blaming, trying to control the narrative, poisoning the well in case Maya ever spoke up. It reinforced our decision to keep things quiet for now, focusing solely on Maya's healing. Dealing with his potential smear campaign felt secondary, and honestly too exhausting to contemplate on top of everything else. The apartment remained our haven. We spent our evenings there, building a new routine. Sometimes we'd talk about the trauma, Maya sharing more fragmented memories or feelings as they surfaced. Sometimes we'd just exist together, finding comfort in each other's presence. Physical intimacy was slow, tentative. The violation had impacted Maya deeply, and rebuilding trust and comfort in physical touch was a process that required patience, communication, and unwavering respect for her boundaries. There were moments of frustration, of sadness for what had been lost or damaged, but they were always tempered by the underlying current of love and determination. We started taking short walks around the neighborhood again, down Ingersoll Avenue, past the familiar shops and restaurants, the old houses with their wide porches, the physical act of moving, of being outside in the world, even just for a little while, felt like a small act of defiance against the trauma that had tried to confine her. The sounds and sights of our city, the rumble of the train, the distant sirens, the changing colors of the sky over the downtown skyline, were grounding, a reminder of the life that was still here, waiting for her to fully re-enter it. Therapy started. Maya was nervous before her first appointment, but she came back looking tired, but also a little lighter. Having a dedicated space to process the trauma with a trained professional was clearly going to be crucial. I didn't push her for details about her sessions. That space was hers. I just made sure she knew I was there to talk before or after, or just to listen. There were still hard days. Days when the memories felt overwhelming, when the sadness was too heavy, when the injustice of it all felt unbearable. On those days, the apartment would feel quiet and heavy again. I'd just hold her, or make her tea, or sit with her in silence, letting her know she wasn't alone in it. We talked about the future tentatively, not about marriage or houses yet.